I think that kitten is behind the door. Let's continue with the Sinister Sisters. Um, I'm for people that know the word or have some introduction to the word. The most essential key to not being a part of the Sinister Sister, or any community that will take you out of the word and that will have you aligned with and speaking like you one of the people in the world, is to know who you're listening to. And for me, that's very key and pivotal because I've always been an overthinker. And also in overthinking, it was some things, incident, well, not even an incident. Um, I grew up without a relationship with my father. And that was very, the absence. The absence and the presence of a father are pivotal. The absence leaves a void and a longing. And it also, if you don't have any answers, you can create your own narrative, which I did. And also, the presence of a father, depending on who the father is, that can also be damaging. That's why it's essential in choosing who you mate with is very key. And a lot of times now, and always through time, people choose based on superficial things and not things that really matter. And then you end up with unstable individuals, immature individuals, individuals who never saw what it was to lead, so they don't know how to lead. And for most women, I think that we have an innate desire to be led, to follow, to have a man that's in charge, to be able to write us when we like going off kilter. So when you don't have that, you get a little bit. For me, I know for me, I can't respect. I don't have so much respect for a man that I can just not take any advice from, that I can't say, hey, let me call him, see what his opinion is. I, once I deem, and I never really had that until, unfortunately, I made a wrong turn and chose unwisely. And when once the poop wore off, and I was like, hold up, you can't even depend on, like, every blue moon you could get maybe a decent advice, but then you had to be sober minded. The individual was rarely sober minded after a while, so it was like, I can't talk to you. And for me, I'm a thinker. I read. I like good stimulating conversation. I don't like stupid, like, we can have fun and joke, but when it's serious, I like to have stimulating conversation. So having arguments about hearsay and accusations and stuff like that, I don't like stuff like that. To me, that's very limiting and it's small minded. So it's a turn off. And then in the male, yeah. So when it's no use to me for somebody that I can't come to for logic and guidance and to say, hey, nah, hold on, that wasn't, you need to do XYZ, or that I can't trust or rely on your opinion. And then if I can't trust and rely on your opinion, and then I can't trust or rely on you to keep your word with finances. And a lot of times we set ourselves up, and females repeatedly, some people have a type. They like the hardcore street, whatever, but some street dudes just not. They only going to places if they really in the life on the street. And that's not sustainable for a family. It's not good for children. It's not good for you either. So a lot of times we do ourselves a disservice. But I'm going to go back to what and who you're listening to, because that's the start of everything. So in the garden, after Adam was created and God, put him to sleep, and then he removed one of his ribs and fashioned woman out of Adam, thus woman, because Adam said she was bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh. So she was made for him. He was made for her. After that, and in the garden, he was in the garden too, but he wasn't in close proximity with her. He probably was working. I don't know how well his instructions were to her on what God said to do or not to do, but apparently the voice and the admonition and listening to Adam was circumvented by listening to the serpent. So she listened to the serpent over Adam. And then instead of reprimanding her, Adam partook. So the first issue we have is listening. Who are you listening to? If something comes from God or is from God, you should be able to pull out the word and find reference or pray on it, and at some point have some peace. And then you have to know some things about God. God is not anything about confusion. He's very clear. It's not going to be any trickery or deceit. It is what it is. If you keep this commandment, long life. If you keep your mind stayed on me, you be in perfect peace. Because peace comes from the world can't give you peace. There's not any peace in the world. Look around you. There's no peace in the world. You have to get your peace from above. And I have experienced that myself. And I would recommend to anybody that's going through anything, the book of Psalms. Psalms is very soothing. You see David go through a lot of things. And then was it Psalms 42 or was it 41? I think it's 42, where it talks about my soul panteth, as the deer panteth for what my soul panteth. He was broken. His heart was broken. He was broken. He was in a broken place. He was depressed. But he delighted. He got in front of the Lord and he read, or whatever he needed to do, he did. He didn't go out and hurt anybody. None of that. Did he do wrong? Yeah, it was times when his eyes was on, when he got a little fleshy and got lusty, like with Bathsheba. But he knew the word and he knew how to right himself and correct himself. So who you're listening to, and every time I hear somebody say, well, who are you listening to? Or who told you that? And the reason why it's pivotal for me now when I hear that, after my grandfather passed in 2018, I sought out a Christian counselor because, yeah, I know the Bible, I know the word, I could pray, but it was just so overwhelming. My grandfather was the ultimate father that God placed in my life. And I had spent years, up until I was 26 maybe, hating my father. So in hating my father, I hated a lot of males. I didn't trust males. And then when I did get in a relationship with a male and my heart was broken, that just solidified my hatred for males. But then until I had a son, and I'm sure people have heard me go over this before, until I had my first son, and I was like, oh, you're going to have to deal with this because you can't assign to your son your father or any individual that's broken your heart. He's not them. And your son is going to grow up to be a man someday. So if you're hating all men, with the exception of, see, I had an exception. I think my grandfather, and probably my uncles, my cousins, that's it. And those are exceptions. But it doesn't work that way because they still men. So at the end of the day, if you hate the majority of men, how you going to raise a son well? So I had to deal with that. So at 26 years old, I had to make the decision to forgive my father. And he was dead at that point. But I did it. And let me tell you, I felt an immediate release. I felt like a weight was lifted off of me. And no, I didn't overnight just instantly be like, oh, I love all of y'all. it's something you have to learn, but then you have to grow into discernment about the qualities that you should be looking for in a mate. And my grandfather, Lord knows, he tried to help me. I remember vividly now when I look back, I'm like, he really was trying to steer you in the right direction to a man that would be that. Well, you wouldn't probably have no headaches in your life. The only headache you probably would have had was like, the things that come with life. But as far as bills or stability, I probably wouldn't have had no headaches. Because that's what families, that's what they did. When you give when fathers would give their daughters to their husbands when they get married, especially during the days when you had to go ask for the father's hand in marriage. I think some guys, thank God, still do that. It's rare, but I think it's an honor. Because what you're saying is, yeah, young man, it's the father letting them, look, you about to be my daughter. That's my pride and joy, the apple of my eye. I've been taking care of her. And if you can't take care of her the way that I've been taking care of her, then, I mean, it's an expectation exchange between man and man. So, do I regret not listening to my grandfather? Yep. Yep. 5,000%, but I can't do anything about it. All I can do is try to steer myself in a better direction now that I'm older, steer my daughter in a better direction, and then steer any young woman in a better direction. But again, we're going to go back to the listening, because the key to what we're going to talk about going forward for the next couple of days, I don't know how many days, or it might just be the day. I don't know, I might just do a series of videos and just drop them sporadically, but because we really have to deal with the female right now. When I realized I was listening to Satan, because when you're hating all men, you're not supposed to have any hatred or bitterness or malice. So that's all that's wrapped up in one. And then it was a point in time when I was a little bit envious or jealous of females that grew up with their fathers, because they had their daddy-daughter relationship. They were treasured by their fathers. The fathers would take them and do this, that, and the other. That was my grandfather, right? But you don't understand at the time that sometimes where your father falls short, if you're lucky, you have somebody else that is there to step in. But it's something innate in human beings. You want to know who your father and mother are. And that's no different for girls. So yes, boys need their fathers, girls do too. That's why I'm like, you cannot. It's in your best interest to get a mate, or to the best of your ability, pray to God to send you a mate or to sustain your mate, to keep constantly praying for God to move and act, but to be mindful. It's better to pick a stable man that takes work and effort and discipline and God seriously than somebody that's just out here. Yeah, he partying, he fine, he got quick, easy money because he hustling, but hustlers go to jail. Then they get shot and killed and robbed. And then when they enter that type of life, it's not a life that God said to get into, because it's stealing and thieving and treachery and all that other stuff involved. So it's always going to be an enemy or something lurking around. And that, again, is not good for your children. So Eve listened to the serpent despite what she was told by Adam. Then Adam, instead of being the head and saying, Eve, no, we can't do this. We got to make this right. We got to go and pray. He partook. So then that came to the whole, you can't have, that was one layer of access to God. They had fellowship with God every day. But they had to get kicked out of the garden. Man had to toil. Work was going to be very difficult to extract. You had to labor hard. And then childbearing and this, that, and the other. And then what to say your wife, was it the wife is going to rule over you? Or seek to rule over you? So it was going to be a struggle. Because basically what she did was, you over her. And then you both are over the animals and the children. But you are the head. You're the final decision. And instead of making it's one thing that she went and listened to somebody that she should have listened to, the serpent, but then you followed her in that decision. We're seeing too much of that. And it's being taught in the culture. That's why I tell people, pay attention to the narratives, because you see it. People are like, oh, I wonder why. They have been narrating to women for ages about it's your body, it's your choice. You can have sex. You can do this, that, and the other. Don't let nobody objectify, whatever that foolishness is. But yet at the same time, women are out here half dressed. Now they got these shorts are so short. Your butt cheeks are hanging out. Your titties are out to here. They don't care if they got the kids with them. Out looking like whores. And that's because the narrative has become any attention you can get. And the only way you're going to get attention and to separate yourself from everybody else is advertise everything you have. Sleep with whoever you want to. You don't need a man. All the narratives. And when you don't do enough in the church to bring the word of God and teach it and stand up against those lies, when you don't fortify against those lies in your home, yes, your children could succumb to them because they do and they will. All of them don't. Thank God all children don't, but you do have those that will. But if they have not heard it, they're going to struggle a little longer and harder to correct. But you have got to teach it. You have got to lay the foundation because, for one, that's the job. Proverbs 22:6. That's the job. All the way back in the Old Testament. Stop divorcing the New Testament from the Old Testament. The Old Testament was the prophecy. The New Testament was fulfilling. The law was, you still have the law, but you have grace. But that's if you're under the Spirit. If you're still in the flesh, you're still under the law. And it still applies. You cannot, people try to overlook and rewrite, Old Testament, like the Old Testament is dead. No, it's not. Because if it was dead, you wouldn't still be walking around talking about no weapon formed against me shall prosper. That's Old Testament, Isaiah. So you have to go back into Leviticus, 18th chapter, where it talks about you should not lay with mankind as you lay with a woman. Where it talks about molech. Because if you are really a Bible-believing, God-fearing individual, you know the molech is the equivalent of abortion. And because that spirit has taken over, you have women that only thing that they focus on is abortion. They have listened so much to the culture and Satan, who wants to steal, kill, and destroy. He didn't come to give you life. Jesus did. So when you hear a voice like that, that's why you have got to know your word. You have to know who you're listening to. If Jesus came that you might have life and have it more abundantly, he wants your soul to prosper. Because once your soul prospers, yeah, you could prosper without your soul prospering. But you're going to make wrong decisions. You're going to make wrong choices. You're going to be led by things that are going to distract you and take you away from what you should be doing. If you're more led by your physical lusts and nature and eyes, you're going to lose money because you're chasing money instead of trying to build money to build your family and sustain your family and have wealth. You have to have priorities. And anything that controls you owns you. So if your flesh owns you, the spirit doesn't. And that's where we all struggle. I struggle today. We all have struggles. The only thing about God is, see, now this is one thing that we don't like. With God is discipline. It's certain things we have to do. So in the world, it sounds better to just go out and have sex with any and everybody, to forget something that happened. It's better to go out. I'm going to go out and get drunk. I'm going to go get high. I'm going to get this, that, and the other. But once after you do all of that, do you feel better? You felt better for a minute. Do you feel better sustainably? See, with God, you have to put some effort in. You gotta, when something bad happen, you have to maybe think about it, and then you have to put it into perspective, and then you have to go from, well, how can I do this differently? We dwell on things for so long that it weighs us down, and then we get lost in that thing. And if we don't take the thought captive, and if we keep listening to negative individuals and voices, and we not praying and not listening to God, and we don't hear God, and we just fall into the world and listen to the narratives of the world. Oh, woe is me, I can't do any better, I'm a woman. Oh, I can't. But how do you explain women that have done better? Women that are millionaires, women who have good husbands, women who have stable homes, women who have found men that do take care of them and their homes and their children. They work minimally and they work in their home, but they're building up and raising their children. How do you explain people that were poor, but then now they have money? They own things. They're able to because their efforts were put someplace else. They weren't focused on what their problems and challenges were. They found a way to overcome them. And when you have Christ, the most damning thing that makes me sick about a lot of Christians today, you will talk about Jesus and sing, but then you'll turn around during the week and get with somebody in the world and talk about, oh, well, I can't do this, that, and the other because, they don't like when I... Who is they? Who? Because if God be for you, who can be against you? That is why the world is looking at the church and think that Jesus is a joke because of you, a lot of you. You have turned your back on Jesus, and now you are out here advertising for, aligned with, and in support of Molech and the Molech work pushers. And then now we see children being sacrificed. They're not going through the fire no more. Oh, except for the lady that did literally this week. See, little lady this week? Another one? Set fire in her house, and then was that the same one that was pouring hot wax on one of her daughters, and then the older one had to try to put the fire out? See, Molech, they was passing babies through the fire for sacrifice. Abortion, same spirit. It's still sacrificing children. And it goes against God. Because God said children are a heritage from the Lord. So who are you listening to when you go out here and shout your abortion? Who are you listening to when you say, my body, my choice, when God said your body is a temple? Who are you listening to when he said you are fearfully and wondrously made? Before I knew you, or is it before? I gotta go back in Isaiah. But if you know the Bible, you know where I'm going. But the word is ripe and replete with life and death is in the power of the tongue. When you speak abortion, you're speaking death. So when you keep speaking it and you're shouting abortion and you're praising abortion and you're being adamant and defensive and telling men, shut up! You can't tell me about abortion. You're not a woman. You're not this. It's not your body. Why wasn't it your body before you even laid your tail down and opened your legs? You know why the world tells you to do these things? Because your sin is money for some person on the plan of Satan. Because while they're getting rich, abortion doctors make money. Pharmaceutical companies make money off of all the drugs they give you to treat your STIs. Or to give you, what's the thing they always advertise in Truvada? Is that the one that's supposed to use for PrEP or whatever? Do they out here now have people doing endorsements? They make money for that too. To sell you to take the drugs to prevent you from getting a disease. Do you know that God will continue sending diseases to wake you up, or to warn people to stop living? Sexual sin is in the Bible. So who are you listening to when you're out here told to sleep with this man or that man and any man that you want to, or to Go get you some tricks. Girl got a book teaching young girls how to trick. If you want to trick so bad, you need a husband. That's the only person that needs to trick on you. Satan has flipped everything, and you have silly females in the church sitting on pews and in pulpits, co-signing, loose living. You know why? Because they're already out of order. Go to Revelations 2:20 and know that God has something against us for allowing Jezebel to be put forth before his people and for listening to her. It matters who you are listening to and what you're listening to. And at some point, you have got to take ownership and responsibility for what you listen to and you intake. Not everybody is able to withstand listening to spin that. Because you got young people out here now, everything is fast because you done just gave them stuff. Whether they had a good report card or not, you just gave them stuff. They dumb as a doorknob, but you just gave them stuff. So they listening to that and think everything's supposed to come quick, so work hard. You see them, they out here doing videos, quitting jobs, because they being asked to do stuff that they don't want to do because they don't want to work. Why? Because you ain't never make them wait for nothing. Even when they should have waited, when their grades were bad. So it matters who you are listening to. Because once we get together and get right on who we're listening to, we can hear God. Remember Moses in the burning bush? God had to get Moses' attention. God doesn't talk loud. The devil is loud, just like that's why these clamorous women are loud. The devil is loud and always wrong. That's why a lot of people are loud and wrong. You have got to sit your tail down, get you a Bible, and you have to be still, because the still small voice is how Jesus speaks. And that is why a lot of people are missing it. And he might not always sound like you think he's going to sound. He's not. He's going to sound like correction. He's going to sound like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. But when you reject correction, you the fool. Because that makes you more open to the devil and listening to him. And it's time out. Because the children, as I always say, are at stake. When you can sit up here as females and failed males, the emasculated males, that will stand and sit here and support this woman that they're out here following behind. As I hear a little bit of seeing and uncovered, she was a nurse. She was a nurse. Her husband had taken off maternity leave or paternity leave, had hired her a nanny to help out. So it failed her. Everything is about what everybody else did, but not her. She strangled her 3 babies. With me, that's the end of the story. I can sympathize about her state of mind because I'm a mother. Of course I had babies. I can understand. I've been depressed before in my life, but I've never wanted to hurt my children. I couldn't imagine. To me, anybody that hurts a child is a demon. You actually put your hand. No, I'm sorry. She used some type of athletic something. I forgot what it. And put it around her children. You got women talking about, oh, she couldn't do that. She didn't do it by herself. Why can't you? Y'all say y'all could do everything that a man could do. Somebody debunk these lying people out here, please. She sent her husband to the store on an errand. She told her children to go with God. Now, in the moment that she said something, told her, do it now, that was her and Satan. Because she was listening to Satan. Like a whole lot of females are doing today. And she's not the only murderous mama out here. But she's the one that's making millions. So we y'all got millions more. But I don't have no millions to buy kids books to help them read. Get tutoring to help them read. We have a literacy problem. But who are you listening to? Stop listening to the world, because Satan roams to and from here. Get sober. Get vigilant. And stop listening to the great distorter of truth. Because many people are living lies. We'll be back for another one later.